At 75 years old, a famous guy named Richard Dean Anderson, you know MacGyver, has finally told his big secret. And the real reason he left the movie world Hollywood is way more heartbreaking and surprising than anyone thought. For many years, everyone knew him as the super smart and brave hero who could turn a regular paperclip into something that saves a life. But when the cameras were off, the person everyone loved was fighting secret hard problems that no one ever got to see. Being famous gave him lots of stress, made him super tired, and caused big personal troubles. These things slowly pushed him away. He got to a point where he felt the only thing left to do was to just walk away from it all. For many years, we mean decades, he never told anyone the real reasons why he left, but now he is talking. In this story, we will look at the hidden sadness, the moments that completely changed his life, and the truth he is finally ready to share with all of us. Stick with me because his story shows a side of MacGyver that we were never supposed to see. A side of Richard that's very human. Richard Dean Anderson was born on a very, very cold morning on January 23rd in the year 1950 in a place called Dawson Creek, which is in Canada. But he didn't stay there for long. Just a few days later, his parents wrapped him up warmly and drove him across the line to the United States, where they settled down in a city named Minneapolis. Richard was the first of four boys in the family, and he grew up with a lot of fun and creative stuff all around him. His father, named Stuart, worked as a teacher of English and acting during the day, and then at night he played jazz music on his bass guitar in smoky clubs. His mother, Jocelyn, made their house full of paintings, clay things, and big white canvases for art. Their home was always busy with music, art projects, and half-written scripts for plays, and this helped shape who he was a long time before he understood it. When he was little, he would often sit way in the back, in the shadows of the school theater, watching his dad lead the actors in practice. He once watched some grown-up actors standing around a pretend cake that was actually made from famous little snack cakes called Twinkies, and he never forgot that strange picture. It was a reminder of how you could make something magical from nearly nothing. Growing up in a town called Roseville, his heart was split in two. One side loved the exciting, cold rush of ice hockey, and the other side loved getting lost in warm daydreams. For Richard, hockey wasn't just something he did for fun. It was the beating heart that kept him feeling alive and busy. People sometimes made jokes about him, calling him a hockey-crazy person, but no one ever said he wasn't good at it. Even a very famous hockey player named Stan Mikita said Richard was skilled, giving the young Richard a little peek at the big future he kept dreaming about. He really, really wanted to play hockey as his job as a professional. He wanted to hear the loud cheering of the rink, the sudden burst of energy, and the life he had imagined since he was a small boy. But life had a completely different plan for him than what he wanted. When he was just 16 years old, his whole dream completely fell apart, like a tower of blocks crashing down. In one really hard hit on the ice, he broke one of his arms. 3 weeks after that, before the first arm was even healed up, another accident smashed his other arm. The second injury was so bad that it kept him stuck in a hospital bed for 3 long months just lying there. He had metal pins, metal plates put in, and he needed surgeries. The doctors warned him that his hands might never move normally again, and that was terrifying. Before this, important people called scouts had been watching him to play professional hockey. His future had looked totally clear and certain. And now all of a sudden that future was completely gone, just like that. What he lost wasn't just a job or a career. It was the person he felt he was, the identity he had built around the ice, the speed, and the cold air hurting his lungs. The deep sadness that followed was heavy and felt like it was suffocating him. His bedroom was quiet, his skates just sat there untouched, and the stillness and silence hurt him even more than his broken bones. But in that quiet time, something else started to grow and live. He began to move slowly toward the world his father was in, stages, written scripts, and plays at school. He joined groups that put on plays, and he even performed on stage with big casts still wrapped around his broken arms. Slowly, acting became the strong rope he held onto so he wouldn't fall. It was the one thing that kept him moving forward when everything else had been destroyed. Somewhere in those small, not perfect performances, a little spark of fire started, and it simply refused to go out. Life at home was also tough and not very easy. Money was always a problem, and things were very tight. His father's pay from teaching was barely enough to keep the whole family going, and the money he earned from his jazz playing wasn't always steady or enough. Richard helped out by delivering newspapers, and he quickly learned how to make every single penny last as long as possible. Yet, even though they had so little money, his strong desire for a great adventure only grew bigger. When he was just 10 years old, he tried riding his bike nearly 100 miles toward a city called Duluth, and he only turned back when his small body was simply too tired to keep going even one step further. But he didn't feel like he had failed. Instead, he felt incredibly brave for even trying. By the time he was 17, that courage turned into something even more wild and daring. He rode his bicycle across the whole continent, traveling over 5,600 miles through Canada and all the way up to Alaska, and he finished the last month of the trip completely alone. Earlier that same year, he had somehow survived a mean snowstorm in a place called New Mexico. The wind was blowing so strongly that it almost picked him right up off the ground. Even with all that danger, he kept on chasing the next big thrill. He learned how to scuba dive deep underwater. He collected motorcycles, 4 of them including a big Harley, and he even jumped off school roofs, crashed his dirt bikes, and then just laughed it off. He dove into a swimming pool, hit his head hard, needed to get stitches, and then he just kept going. One cold winter, he even built his own igloo, a house made of ice blocks, and tried to live inside it for 3 whole days, and he almost froze to death while doing it. The pain didn't scare him at all. Failing didn't scare him at all either. In the year 1976, Richard Dean Anderson made a huge decision that most people would have been too scared to ever make. He decided to leave Ohio University, packed up his uncertain future into a bag, and drove to Los Angeles with only a stubborn dream and not much else. There were no guaranteed jobs waiting for him, just a lot of rent he needed to pay and many long days of trying to survive. He took every kind of job he could find, even one of the strangest ones. He worked as a performer swimming alongside huge whales in a marine park show. It was not a fancy job, but it taught him a lot about staying calm when things were stressful and how to face a big crowd of people without feeling scared or running away. Before he went to LA, he had already fought his way through the tough theater world of New York, getting many small acting roles and doing weird jobs, like they were little stepping stones leading toward something bigger that he couldn't quite see yet. Then, almost as fast as a snap, the spring of 1976 changed everything for him. He got his first big, important job on a daytime TV show called General Hospital, where he played the part of Dr. Jeff Weber. He stayed on that show for 5 years, filming more than 600 episodes. His face became a famous part of American afternoons right as the show became super popular and its ratings skyrocketed. By 1979, General Hospital was the best daytime drama in the country, and Richard's name and face were a big part of why it was so famous. Working with other big actors like Denise Alexander and Stuart Damon, he changed from just a hopeful new guy into someone that important movie and TV producers really kept their eyes on. When he finally left the show in 1981, he didn't stop working for a minute. He popped up in shows like The Facts of Life, Today's FBI, and he even took a trip on the Love Boat. He chose each new acting job very carefully. It was his quiet way of saying he could do way more than just daytime soap operas. But the road to success was not easy or smooth. Between 1982 and 1984, he was the main actor in 2 TV shows on the CBS network, Seven Brides for Seven Brothers and Emerald Point NAS. Sadly, both shows were canceled after only 1 short season on the air. That meant 2 big chances were cut short right away. For many young actors, that kind of double disappointment, one right after the other, would have made them quit acting forever. But a new role came along soon after, and it was the one that completely changed his life. Everything in Richard Dean Anderson's life changed completely in the year 1985. When he walked in for the MacGyver audition, he didn't try to look like a typical super strong action hero. He left his glasses on and looked very natural and real, not polished. That honesty hit the producers right away, and they loved it. They weren't looking for a normal tough guy actor. They wanted someone who seemed believable and smart. Richard was the perfect fit for that idea. Even though he had no special training in doing dangerous stunts, he said he wanted to do most of the risky scenes himself, about 70% of them. He truly hated real guns in his personal life, and that feeling matched the character. R's rule about not using guns, making the whole job feel like a very personal fit. When the MacGyver show started, people loved it right away. From 1985 to 1992, the series showed 139 episodes, and it changed Richard from just a regular soap opera guy into a huge cultural hero. By 1990, he was making an amazing $1 million for every single season, and later he even got special producer credits, which meant he got a share of the money the show made every time it was rerun. The TV show became a gigantic hit, a phenomenon. Parents loved the smart ways he solved problems. Kids loved the tricks that used science. The name MacGyver even became a verb, a doing word. If you fixed something using weird things you found, people said you had MacGyvered it. 14 years after the show ended, he brought the character back for a funny Super Bowl advertisement, which shows how much the role was still a huge part of popular culture. But this huge success came with a very painful price to pay. In 1987, while filming a scene where he was running on ground that wasn't flat, Richard stepped into a hidden hole on the set. The bad landing caused a disc in his back to burst out. A sudden electric pain shot down his leg right away, but he kept filming the show. He swallowed a lot of painkillers and refused to let a stunt man do the rest of the work. For a year and a half, he filmed the show while being in constant, terrible pain. Doctors warned him that he could suffer permanent nerve damage if he kept pushing it. He eventually had an operation that helped a lot, but the pain never completely disappeared from his back. Some of the most memorable and clever ideas in the show actually came from Richard's own childhood, like the famous idea to use a paperclip to invent something in the first episode. He had grown up taking apart many gadgets and toys, and the script writers quickly started using his own creativity to make MacGyver's unique style. By 1991, the pressure of the job became way too much. He collapsed right on the set, feeling totally exhausted and dehydrated, pushed way past the point of what a human body can handle. The doctors told him that his body was running on only 20% of its normal energy. Richard begged to leave the TV show, but the studio threatened to sue him for $18 million if he walked away from his contract. He felt totally trapped inside the job that had made him famous, realizing too late that the character of MacGyver had completely taken over his whole life. In 2004, Richard Dean Anderson faced a big turning point, a moment he never saw coming on his other popular show, Stargate SG-1. During what should have been a normal running scene for the show's 8th season, his foot slipped, his knee twisted badly, and his ligaments instantly tore. The pain was sharp and intense with no mercy. He had to have surgery, and then there were many long months of physical therapy to get better. Doctors gave him a very blunt warning. If he kept doing the physically demanding action scenes, he might one day have a hard time even just walking normally. Instead of just removing his character from the show, the writers changed the show to help him. His character, Colonel O'Neill, was promoted to Brigadier General, which gave him a job sitting mostly at a desk, so he wouldn't need to throw himself into action fights anymore. Fans noticed that something was different about the character, but the real, painful reason for the change was kept a secret for many years. Even today, Anderson walks with a slight limp, and it's a quiet reminder of that terrible moment on set. The bills for all his medical care cost more than $200,000, which was mostly paid for, but the emotional cost to him was much, much heavier. He never took another acting job that required him to do intense physical activity after that. Funny enough, that very same time period gave the show one of his best creative moments. Anderson got to direct an episode called Double Jeopardy in Season 4, and it mixed science fiction with something that was very personal to him: hockey. Using his 15 years of playing the sport, he planned out the alien battle scenes to look exactly like the fast, tricky power plays you see on a hockey rink. He studied professional NHL hockey tapes, drew out the moves on paper, and demanded that they film the scenes many, many times to get them right. One short part was filmed an astonishing 47 times. The episode ended up costing $300,000 more than it was supposed to, and the person in charge of the stunts eventually quit because he was so exhausted. But when that episode was finally shown on TV, it completely smashed the viewing records with 3.1 million people watching, the most of that season. Yet, underneath all the cheers and applause, Anderson himself was quietly reaching his absolute limit. In 1992, Richard Dean Anderson shocked everyone by doing a role that was very different from the good guy image his fans had made up for H. He took a very scary role in a CBS movie called Through the Eyes of a Killer, which was shown on December 15th. Instead of the smart, kind hero that audiences loved, he became Ray Bellano, a construction worker whose quick love story with a woman named Lori goes into a dangerous obsession when she tries to leave him. The movie, which was based on a famous old play, was filmed in Vancouver and lasted just over an hour and a half. It didn't get huge TV ratings and only got okay reviews, but it showed something very important about him. Anderson was not afraid to take off his hero mask and look at the darker, shadow sides of a character. 14 years after that, the same brave attitude showed up in a completely different way in a comedy. In 2006, he appeared in an episode of The Simpsons called Kiss Kiss Bang Bangalore, which was written by a comedian named Dan Castellaneta. Anderson played a funny version of himself who joking confessed that he actually never liked playing MacGyver and only took the job because he really needed the money. Patty and Selma, two characters who are huge MacGyver superfans, kidnap him because they just can't believe what he said, but then he quickly escapes using a contact lens as a makeshift tool, a funny wink back to his famous character. Then the episode gets even weirder. Anderson becomes addicted to the exciting feeling of escaping and starts begging them to kidnap him again and again, just for the thrill of the challenge. It was a smart, funny episode where he laughed at his own fame, and he could switch from a dark role to comedy without a second of hesitation. And beneath all of it, one true thing stayed clear. He was always the kind of man who did not want to be put in a box and told who to be by other people's expectations. In 1992, his love life seemed to change very quickly. The news headlines were huge when people found out he was dating Katharina Witt, the amazing ice skater from East Germany who was the best in the world and won 4 championship titles. She wasn't just famous, she was a true icon in sports. Their love story was bright but very quick, only lasting from March to April of that year. Reporters and cameras followed them everywhere they went. The news media picked apart every single moment they spent together. And right in the middle of all that noise and attention, their relationship cracked and broke. Witt was still competing and the pressure on her was unbearable. Anderson admitted that all the attention felt like it was suffocating him. Many people thought he had finally found the woman he would stay with forever. Instead, the moment disappeared as fast as it had arrived. Before all this, the longest time he had a steady relationship was in the middle of the 1980s with an actress named Sela Ward. They first met playing brother and sister on a TV show set, but they felt a strong pull toward each other almost right away when they weren't filming. She had just moved to Los Angeles and was living only a few steps away from his place. And even though they never got married, they lived together like a real, stable couple. But the MacGyver show demanded long workdays, sometimes up to 15 hours, which meant they only got to be a couple on the weekends. He would later call it a beautiful part of his life, and the only thing that made it sad was his own fear of getting married. After they broke up, he dated another actress, Teri Hatcher, from 1991 to 1993, a relationship that lasted for nearly 2 years. But once again, the same pattern happened. Nice endings, but he never made a promise to stay forever. Then came a woman named April Prose, the one who managed to soften something deep inside him. She wasn't a celebrity or a star. She was simply a wardrobe stylist, someone who handles clothes for actors who he met through some friends. She didn't expect anything from him. But after just one date, she called her mother and told her she had met the man she would build a whole life with, and she was right. They stayed together for 7 years. In 1998, their daughter, Wiley Quinn Anna Rose Anderson, was born. He was 48, still not married, but he was finally settled and anchored by the fact that he was a father. Even when he and April split up in 2003, there was no anger between them, only his deep love and commitment to his little girl. But before Wiley arrived, one romance almost ruined him. In 1995, he dated the actress Lara Flynn Boyle, who was one of Hollywood's brightest young stars at the time. The 21-year age difference between them became a favorite story for the messy tabloid newspapers. Reporters and photographers swarmed them all the time. The close watching was non-stop and relentless. For a man who had always tried so hard to keep his life private, it felt like being stripped naked in front of everyone. The relationship ended because of all the mean gossip and pressure, but the emotional pain and bruises stayed with him for a long time. He later admitted that this was the moment he truly started to pull back from being famous, because he learned just how cruel and harsh the spotlight could be. When he began working on the TV show Stargate SG-1 in 1997, he made a smart choice that quietly changed the whole direction of his life. Instead of staying in the busy, loud city of Los Angeles, he fled to Vancouver, a Canadian city where all the noise of Hollywood disappeared and the world felt much calmer and kinder. For 8 months every single year, he lived far away from all the red carpets and the huge Hollywood crowds. He hiked on forest trails, played ice hockey with his friends, and enjoyed being able to walk around without anyone knowing who he was, a feeling he could never get in LA. And when his daughter Wiley was born in 1998, that distance and privacy became sacred and very important to him. His house in Vancouver turned into a safe place where he could simply be a normal dad. But her birth was not peaceful. It was actually terrifying. She came out silent and not breathing, and doctors rushed all around her while he stood there, feeling totally helpless and trying hard not to break down. When the doctors finally told him that she would be okay, he cried openly. He later said that moment broke him and then immediately rebuilt him all at the same time. From that day on, she became the absolute center of his entire world. After he and April separated in 2003, he jumped fully into being a single dad. No doubting himself, no regrets at all. He took care of every single responsibility, the bottle feedings, the nights with no sleep, the early mornings. Even when he was in his late 60s, he was still doing the school drop-offs and pickups, still choosing his daughter over every script that was offered to him. Acting slowly started to disappear from his life, replaced by quiet days on his property in Malibu and the steady, loving rhythm of raising his daughter. He confessed that becoming a father at the age of 48 hit him deeper than anything he had ever imagined or expected. During her first year, he cried almost every day, feeling overwhelmed, incredibly grateful, and completely changed. When April first told him she was going to have a baby, he tried to stay calm and cool. But soon, he was reading every parenting book he could find and even joined yoga classes to get ready for the birth. The man once known as Hollywood's most desired single guy became someone who ignored his phone calls, canceled plans with friends, and spent hours just holding his child, unable to look away from her face. By 2013, he made a huge decision that shocked even the people who followed him closest. He walked away. At 63, with his Stargate show finished and MacGyver just a happy memory, he quietly stepped out of the entertainment industry that had been his whole life for many decades. There was no huge announcement, no big farewell tour. He simply chose to stop. His daughter was now a teenager. His body was tired and worn out from all the years of stunts and action, and he flat-out refused to let the bad parts of his own history happen again. He never forgot the people who once told him that he was never home when he was little. He couldn't stand the thought of his own daughter ever saying the same sad thing about him. Between 2023 and 2025, he turned down job offers that most actors could only dream about. Over $23 million in pay, gone without even a moment's doubt. The company Netflix wanted to make a documentary about his life. Disney wanted him to come back for a new Stargate project. Paramount wanted him to do just one more episode of MacGyver. He said no to every single one of those big offers. He did it not because he was too proud, but because he didn't want his real life to become just another product to sell. He didn't want to pretend to feel nostalgic for the old days. He would only say yes to the few opportunities that felt truly honest and real to him, and those chances were becoming very rare to find. Then, in May 2025, at a big fan convention in London, he surprised all his fans again, but this time with a brutally honest speech. Filling in for his co-star Amanda Tapping at the very last minute, he spoke openly and honestly about Hollywood, calling it a machine that sucked out people's souls and then just threw away the human beings inside it. The whole room became totally silent. Some people even started crying. For the very first time, he was not selling a fake smile. He was finally speaking his truth. Now 75 years old, he lives a very comfortable and quiet life in Malibu. His home is worth millions of dollars, but money is not the thing that guides him anymore. He strongly supports groups that protect the environment, he fights against people who illegally hunt whales, and he helps out youth programs with his voice and fame. He only appears at a very small handful of fan events each year. Peace and quiet have become the most important things in his life. He didn't retire from acting just to disappear forever. He retired so he could finally truly live, so he could choose being real over getting applause, and so he could remain the one thing he never wanted to fail at, being present for his daughter.